Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another Overreaction Sunday. We had a Saturday at the Woody that I could not attend. That our officially credentialed member of the Ohio State Buckeyes media, Mr. Andrew T. Evans, attended. He went down to the Woody. I watched some of the live stream on local on YouTube from one of our local TV people. And yes, Andrew, what were your thoughts? So I saw Chip Kelly, I saw Will Howard's interview, I saw Jeremiah Smith's interview, and that was it. I meant to tune in more, but it seemed like it was the usual. We're really excited for this game. We're really ready for it. But I mean, at this point, I believe him after that big victory. It sounds like the plan is to take the momentum generated from the butt whooping they dished out to Tennessee, and just build on that, go from there. What were your takeaways?
Yeah, that was pretty much it. It was we're excited, we're fired up. Chip Kelly was asked, as well as the other guys too. The Emeka Buka also gave an interview, as well as Quinshon Judkins, who might have been the quickest at the podium interview in OSU history. I don't think it lasted more than 5 minutes. He got about 4 or 5 questions asked, and that was about it. And his responses are always pretty brief. You got to love Quinshon. He's just big the one smile. Thing that Quinshon, huh?
You have his big smile. His
yeah.
He's always got his signature big smile. Happy
he does have a signature big smile for sure. But that was the norm. That was, we're ready, we're excited, we're motivated. Like I said, Chip Kelly, Will Howard, they were all pretty much asked, do you feel like you still have that momentum from the big win over Tennessee? And they all said yes. What are they going to say? No, we're really down right now. But Chip's like,
we're going to lose.
Yeah. I mean, of course they're not going to say that, right? But they said, yeah, we're still motivated, we're still fired up, we're ready. One of the things that Will Howard said was that you don't get an opportunity to play the same team twice in the same season. Chip said this; they all pretty much said that. But Will Howard's response, I took note of, because he said, you don't get to play. Typically, it's very rare that you play the same team twice in the same season, and typically the same team doesn't win a second time. And I'm like, ooh, okay, all right. Got a little bit of bulletin board material there for the Ducks, Mr. Howard. And the one thing that Jeremiah said was that he is ready for them to go out and put on a show. And I'm like, all right, okay. This is very much bulletin board material for Oregon. Shots have been fired in a way. Like, they're not specific. I mean, they went on to say, hey, look, Oregon is a great team, obviously. But it's going to be an interesting ball game for sure. And let's not forget, though, Chip Kelly pointed this out, that Oregon didn't have some of the guys playing for them that are going to be playing for them in this game. Most notably, Jordan Birch, the defensive end, who a lot of, talent scouts and NFL experts are saying is, without a doubt, like a first-round draft pick. So he's going to be playing. A guy like Trayshawn Holden, who got kicked out of the first quarter for spitting in Davison Igbinosun's face. He had one huge catch for 32 yards, and then he got kicked out. And so essentially he really didn't play a majority of the game. Of course, Ohio State had Jimmy Simmons, who then he got hurt in that game for the season, and they had to supplement him with Austin Searveld. So Now that Ohio State's got a patchwork line, who played very well against Tennessee, didn't allow a sack, and they've had some time now, and especially that Tennessee game proved that, okay, this offensive line seems like they're coming together. Are they going to be able to hold up against a defensive line like Oregon that is good, that caused a fumble, the only turnover of the game for either team, and especially with them having Jordan Birch, how is Ohio State's offensive line going to hold up? So I think that's another big question coming into the Rose Bowl. But, you look statistically, obviously it wasn't Ohio State's offense. It was Ohio State's defense. It was really both defenses, right? I mean, 32-31 ball game. It wasn't like it was a huge high scoring affair, but offensively, Oregon had almost 500 yards, and Ohio State was close behind them with like 460 some yards. So both teams were on it. Both quarterbacks were on it. If I'm not mistaken, I got the stats pulled up right here. Oregon did have one sack in the game. Ohio State did not have any sacks on Dillon Gabriel, and Dillon Gabriel had time to throw, and Dillon Gabriel looked good when he stepped up into the pocket. He was hitting guys over the middle on 10, 15-yard, in routes. He made plays with his feet, obviously having a 27-yard touchdown run on an option keeper. That was a huge moment for Dillon Gabriel. But, it wasn't like Will Howard was a slouch either. I mean, he had one of his 7 games this year, Drew, completing at least 80% of his passes. He was 28 of 35, 326 yards, 2 touchdowns. Gabriel, which was at 80% for the game, Gabriel was 23 of 34, 341 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. He completed 68% of his passes. So both quarterbacks were on it. It's going to be a huge question of the differences we've seen in Jim Knowles' defense up to this point in the season, especially after the Oregon game. They came with some blitzes in the Oregon game, but he really retooled and revamped and has come up with some unique ways to putting pressure on the quarterback. Can they do that against Oregon on Wednesday night? We'll find out.
Yeah, I think they can. I think it's going to be a different game for sure. The teams are both very different. I think OSU's finally kind of meshed, at least I hope so, in the Tennessee game. Oregon, they're coming off that extended break too, and I think people are acting like it's Chip Kelly had even said that, well, we had that break before the playoff because we didn't play in the Big Ten championship. A playoff, already playing in the playoffs versus the Big Ten championship's completely different. And oddly enough, the way that the seeding fell, Oregon would have been better to lose the Big Ten championship. But I think that OSU, I think it's going to be, I don't really know. I think that neutral field is going to be a big part of it. OSU hasn't lost a Rose Bowl in 40 years. The last time, as you pointed out to me yesterday over the phone, was in 1985 Rose Bowl against who'd they lose to?
USC.
So we'll see. We beat Chip Kelly in Oregon in the Rose Bowl. We beat Washington in the Rose Bowl. We beat Utah in the Rose Bowl. We were going to opt out of the Rose Bowl had we, because we've been winning it so much, had we not made the playoff that year. Yeah, I think it's going to be a great game. I think OSU comes out on top. I wouldn't be surprised if OSU wins by 3 touchdowns, and I wouldn't be surprised if it's a real barn burner. I'd be surprised if Ohio State got blown out, but I think that it all depends on what OSU shows up. I think that Oregon, they do have that good defense, but I mean, supposedly Tennessee had a great defense too, and it didn't really look like it. So I think that OSU, I mean, this is really kind of like the big showdown of the probably most expensive teams that through NIL. I know OSU got the bigger press about it, but it kind of turned out Oregon spent more money on their team than we did. So we'll see what happens. I think Ohio State's more talented. Jeremiah Smith is definitely more comfortable on the field. And I think we have a really good plan to get him open and get him looks. And then we have so many weapons that the biggest thing it comes down to is our offensive line holding up. And again, man, they didn't look bad. I mean, our backup left tackle who looked like dog shit against Nebraska looked great against Oregon. So it's gonna be a great game. I think I don't know how it's going to plan out, but I think that Ohio State wins, and I think that we keep the momentum going. So that's where I'm at.
Stats for nerds, as you just pointed out, Drew. It will be on New Year's Day, to the day, exactly 40 years since Ohio State last lost in the Rose Bowl. Yes. And since that 1985 loss against USC on New Year's Day, when Earl Bruce took them into Pasadena for his second Rose Bowl, and it was his second loss, Ohio State has played in the Rose Bowl 4 times and won by each of the last 4 coaches since Earl. John Cooper played in the 97. Jim Tressel played in the 2010, Urban, his swan song in 2019, and then, of course, Ryan Day in the 2022 version. And each one won their respective Rose Bowl appearance. And technically, it was the last bowl game ever coached by both Jim Tressel and Urban Meyer, at least in Urban's sake, as far as being a college football coach. Jim Tressel did coach in the Sugar Bowl the following season, but because of Tattoo-gate, that victory was wiped out of the books. So Jim Tressel ended his career with a Rose Bowl, or at least as far as a bowl game is concerned, ended his tenure at Ohio State and his college coaching career with a Rose Bowl win. So did Urban Meyer. Ryan Day won his, and John Cooper was able to get out there and beat a second-ranked undefeated Arizona State team in wild fashion that still, to me, goes down as one of the best Rose Bowl victories I've ever seen. More stats for nerds, though. Check this out, Drew.
So I love stats for nerds for me, Andrew.
I'm a stat nerd, right? And I think we're all like obsessed with stats to a
we're pretty good at it. You were pretty down, and I was like, "What do you mean they've played like multiple Rose Bowls?" You're like, "What am I talking about?" Yeah, of course they have.
I was like, "Oh, they've only played twice," and I'm like, "Wait a minute," and you're like, "No, they played more than that." And it took my old 47-year-old brain to go, "Wait a minute, yeah, what the hell am I talking about?"
You still had to think through the clouds.
I still had to.
Losing to Michigan. It's still haunting you. And we're going to overreact about it.
We're going to overreact. But 2 more stats for nerds here, Drew. It will be exactly 15 years ago to the day. In fact, the last 2 postseason appearances for Ohio State against Oregon, they've won both times.
But we lost both season games.
Come New Year's Day, it will be 15 years to the day that Ohio State beat Oregon in the Rose Bowl, Jim Tressel's last and only Rose Bowl appearance. And then, of course, this is the 10-year anniversary of the national championship winning team, the last Natty, for the Buckeyes. And who did they beat for the national championship that year? Oregon.
After Oregon smoked Florida State.
And they handed it to Florida State, the defending national champ.
And then we handed it to Oregon.
Huh?
Then we handed it to Oregon.
And then Ohio State turned around and repaid him the favor. Yeah, so the last 2 postseason games that Ohio State has played against Oregon, they've won. Now, if history has proven anything, especially when it comes to that Michigan loss this year, Ryan Day tried to pound it down everybody's throat that Ohio State needed to win the rushing battle because whoever won the rushing battles traditionally, historically, wins the game, and that completely backfired in his face. But if that proved anything, hopefully it doesn't mean that Oregon is due a postseason win against Ohio State and gets it in the Rose Bowl come Wednesday night.
I don't think it's going to happen. I think the road to redemption continues for Ryan Day. And I've been thinking a lot about this. Like, I think like the sting of the losses to Michigan the last 4 years, it's easy to get your judgment clouded about Ryan Day. And also when he doesn't play, like when he doesn't call games like Big Dick Day. I mean, we need to have Big Dick Day around regularly. Um, but I think that
We're
just
not
look
going to share that picture that you were sharing with everybody.
just the but the thing with Ryan Day is this is his first ever HUD coaching job. When we got Jim Tressel, he was already an established coach, but he was just an FCS coach, already a national champion. So he knew, like, but at the same time, like, I kind of want to highlight the negatives of Jim Tressel. Jim Tressel lost all of his big game regular season games except for against Michigan. He lost out of conference. He got blown out by USC in USC.
Twice.
Lost close game at home. Lost to Texas twice. Then he lost to Texas again in the Fiesta Bowl.
Well, no, he beat Texas down at Texas in 06. He
They
lost to him by a field goal in 05 at home. Next season, they went down to Texas, and they handed it to him 24-7. But then he turned around and lost another close game 2 years later in the 08 Fiesta Bowl. Yeah.
So I forgot he did win that second game. But Tressel lost. He lost a lot of big games, and he won a lot of big games. But he always beat Michigan, which gave him a pass. Always won the Big Ten for the most part, which gave him a pass. I remember our friend Kev talking about, like, man, if I was a Big Ten team, I'd just try to get as much as I could from Ohio State's ex-coaching staff, who just dominated the Big Ten the last 10 years. And I'm like, I think he's crazy. We got Urban Meyer, it's fine. Mike D'Antonio goes to Michigan State, plays upset multiple times, and actually goes down as one of the best Michigan State coaches in history. So,
winningest.
Better than Nick Saban, which is where he was cutting his chops. And
wait,
so
wait, hold on. What do you mean better than Nick Saban?
At Michigan State.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, Nick Saban, I don't think was at Michigan State for very long. I think he was there for 4 or 5 years, if that.
Yeah, but his last couple of years, his last year was pretty dominant. That was actually a pretty good year for the Big Ten against the SEC in bowl games specifically.
99. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I just think Urban Meyer, he went to 2 playoffs. So Urban Meyer played for national championship effectively as Ohio State head coach twice. So the first playoff, which we won, the second playoff, he got embarrassed. He only made 2. Jim Tressel played national championship game 3 times and lost twice.
SEC.
Against the SEC. And actually, like,
and of course, we all know who the coach of the first loss to an SEC team
Urban
was.
Meyer, and then the second one was Les Miles.
Yep.
And it was to a 2-loss LSU team. And it's just kind of a crazy, situation. So he was 1-2. So now Ryan Day has gotten to the show 4 times. He so far is 0-3, and we're playing. But he's only been a coach for 6 years, and in those 6 years, I think he has like one of the best winning percentages of all time for your first 6 years as a head coach at one of the premier programs. Like, yes, he had a lot of help going in and taking over, but losing to Michigan really does like blacken his eye when it comes to is perceived like coaching. But we are always in it, and I think that. I don't know. I think it's easy to overreact when it comes to Ryan Day because the Michigan losses. But at the same time, like, I don't know. I think it's, he also got Michigan on the rise. Like, it wasn't like Michigan searching for a coach for 20 fucking years. Like, they got Harbaugh. Harbaugh got sunned. He had one close game with Urban Meyer with the Michigan versus Ohio State rivalry his first year. And then he got embarrassed his first year. Ryan Day's first year was too big of a pussy to play us the next year. and then they started getting it together, and then they went on their national championship run. And the other crazy thing about this season is this is Ryan Day's first year with his recruits, pretty much. So this is like pretty much his team.
No, it's not pretty much. I mean, this is definitely all Ryan Day. Yeah, I mean,
there's not a lot of six-guy clingers. There's not a lot of clingers from Urban Meyer left. So they're all gone.
Yeah. Now, some of these guys, Urban may have had a slight hand in recruiting, because you start recruiting kids, when they're like in 8th, 9th grade anymore,
Yeah.
This is all pretty much Ryan Day, built team, with the exception of, maybe Travion Henderson, who, came in 2021, but Ryan was, obviously Ryan has been on the staff since 2017. So he's been in Columbus when Urban hired him in as an offensive guy since 2017. So even then, Ryan probably had a hand in recruiting. If there are any leftovers, if you will, from the Urban Meyer era, Ryan Day probably had a hand in getting those guys to come here anyways. But just a quick correction. You said that Ryan Day was 0-3
in when it comes to playing for the national championship.
Because he technically only played the Natty one time.
Well, but he got to the playoff, which when you're in the playoff, you're playing for the national championship. You have a path laid out versus like you only got one game. Tressel only got one game.
Right.
Like Tressel had to play all season, then he got one game, and that was it.
Versus technically then he's 1-3 because you're forgetting about that 2020 Sugar Bowl win over Clemson.
Yeah, but that's not. No, because he lost, and like playing for the Natty is like if you don't win that year, but you contested to make it to the championship game. Like, and it was kind of like the Georgia game was the big national championship game that year. The Bama game was 2014 for Urban. I think everybody kind of thought like, well, if we beat Bama, we can win it all. And I think and I think we're in, and it was the same thing with Georgia. If we can beat Georgia, we can win it all. I think when it came to beating Clemson in 2020, it was more like we all kind of felt cheated in that game. There's a lot of shitty calls. We still should have
talking about the year before.
Yeah, and then we blew them out.
Yeah,
and then we blew them out, and then it seemed like the energy was just gone for the Alabama game. I mean, that team had played 7 games. Maybe that was their 8th game.
It was their 8th game. Yeah,
so
it was 7-1.
Yeah, so they didn't get. So there was, Dabo Swinney famously said Ohio State didn't deserve to play, and then he got embarrassed, and then he didn't play in the playoff again until this year. So I don't know. I just think that it stinks losing. Now, the other aspect, like something I was kicking around in my head was like, where were those play calls like the last 2 years that we saw against Tennessee? Like, have we been... I mean, was Chip Kelly just like, we're just going to save everything for once we make it to the playoff?
Well, of course, this being Chip Kelly's first year as the offensive coordinator,
Yeah. Even Ryan Day, like, where was like, we haven't seen play calling like that, which we used to see. Like Big Dick Day used to show up. We're running. I mean, we had explosive offense, dominating offense, and Kyle McCord just set the ACC record for most passing yards in a season.
He did.
So he can throw the ball.
Yeah.
But we just had kind of like milquetoast offense last year. It was just defensive. We had a good defense. But it was like, man, how are we so boring offensively? We just throw it to Marvin Harrison. That was our offense last year.
That was pretty much
Cade Stover, Marvin Harrison, no trust with the quarterback. And then this year we've seen a lot of that with Will Howard, but then like I think like finally it was like the Michigan game was like, hey, we're not really a running up the middle type of team, and we haven't been since Jim Tressel left. We haven't. Like that's not our MO. We get good running backs and we set up the thing, but we don't run the ball up the middle. Like we get the ball to highly skilled players in space, and we let them make plays.
Well, as long as
we throw bombs.
As long as Chip is allowed to call his game unfettered. Ryan Day honestly doesn't have a lot of say in it, and I think that's what we saw against Tennessee, is that Chip was given carte blanche to pretty much call whatever he wanted, and we saw the end result, and it was explosive. And as long as we get to see that again, yeah, Ohio State obviously has a great chance to win, but let's not forget that first game back in October in Eugene. I believe Chip Kelly was allowed to call his game. And offensively, like I stated a few minutes ago, Ohio State played really, really well. They played great in that game. Will Howard played great. The running game actually was solid. 140 some yards. I think 100 and let me see, 141. So as long as Chip is allowed to call his game, and Ryan Day just says, "Hey, Chip, you're my man. You've been my mentor, my teacher. I respect you. I'm going to let you do your thing that will produce the greatest end result." Once again, Ohio State's got a great shot at beating Oregon, but this is not going to be easy. I mean, you talk about a neutral field. Yeah, it's a neutral field technically, but it's definitely a shorter trip for Oregon to make than it is for Ohio State. So being out there on the West Coast, I do see this as more of an Oregon game, but Ohio State travels well, right? Fans do. The Lunatic Fringe, as Kirk Herbstreit called them during the Tennessee broadcast. The Lunatic Fringe
they're not all, but
travels well.
They're not, like, Ohio State fans in general are lunatics, but the Lunatic Fringe is its own thing. It's like people that are like tweeting players, "You don't want to come to Ohio State. We stink," and just other stupid shit that they do. Or I think like the whole Michigan thing, I think people honestly selling their playoff tickets to Tennessee was probably, "Hey, I can make a lot of money. It's going to be really cold." I don't know how much of it was like we lost. I mean, there was probably definitely some we lost Michigan. We need to fire Ryan Day. But I think a majority of it was, it's really cold. I'm going to sell these tickets. They might not even know they were selling them to Tennessee fans. Like, how many people get season tickets and sell a lot of them to pay for their season tickets? So, I mean, there's just a lot of stuff we don't know. It's the same thing. Like, maybe Chip Kelly was calling boring games. Maybe because it sounds like him and Ryan Day. I mean, from the sound of what Ryan Day tells us in the pressers, it's actually like a game plan that we both come up with. I mean, maybe I don't know, man. I think that there's a lot of, I think they are going to travel well. I think Ohio State fans are ready to go to California where it's going to be 75 degrees. I mean, it was brutal outside last Saturday. Like, it was miserable. Like, I was out there selling cigars and I couldn't feel my toes. And Tennessee fans went out there and they were out all day. Like, just, I mean, it was a lot of heart for sure, but it was great to see the third best SEC team get embarrassed the way they did.
Yeah.
But I don't know, man. I think that it's going to be a tough game, but OSU travels well, and I think they're gonna come up with the W. I think it's going to be a completely different game than what we saw earlier in the season, and I think that this is the Ohio State team that we've all been waiting for. That's my hope. When it comes to overreacting, though, the Lunatic Fringe. But I interrupted you about it, but it's a real thing. I mean, are we part of the Lunatic Fringe?
Every fan base has a Lunatic Fringe, dude. Every fan base.
Ohio State's extra special, though. Do you think every team is sending death threats to the coach's family?
It's social media, dude. Everybody wants to hide behind their phone and make threats and say things that they would never say to anybody's face, ever. To sit here and say that no other fan base except for Ohio State fans have sent players and coaches death threats via social media or said something crazy on social media. Once again, that's everybody. And I firmly believe that Ohio State is not the only fan base with the lunatic fringe. Does it maybe have the largest fan base of lunatic fringe, according to Kirk during the Tennessee broadcast? It's around 15 to 20%. It used to be, like he said, 5 to 8% or something like that, and then said he thinks it's now around 15 to 20. He's probably speaking off of personal experience because he moved his family in, like, I don't know, it was like 2010, 2011. He moved them away from Columbus down to Nashville, I believe, because of the OSU fan base getting on his case for not being a huge Ohio State homer. And they felt that, not they, but some people, the lunatic fringe, I guess they felt that Kirk needed to be more pro OSU when he was talking about Ohio State at times during ESPN College Game Day on Saturday mornings. And that's not reality, because that's not his job. Now, if he were working at the Fan here in Columbus, like he did back when he started his broadcasting career, and he was being anti-Ohio State, much like Bruce Hooley, who came out and slaughtered Jim Tressel up and down, and the Fan was like, all right, dude, you're done. You can't disparage, even though, yes, what Jim Tressel did was stupid and it got him fired, you still can't disparage Ohio State's head football coach like that. You just cannot do it. And Bruce Hooley did it, and the Fan waved bye-bye to him. But when you're a national, when you're on a national syndication publication, whatever the case is, and you are being critical at times of a team that you played for in your college days, that's part of your job. That is part of your job. You can't continue to remain a homer for that school and that team simply because you played for them and you grew up in Ohio and all that stuff. That's just not how it works, man. You have to look objectively at things, not subjectively. And so when Kirk was being critical at times and people were giving him grief, I'm like, that's what he's supposed to do. That's what ESPN is paying him to do. But the fans backlashed. And so finally he was like, dude, I can't take this. I'm getting the hell out of Columbus. And then, all the blowback against two of his kids walked on at Clemson. And now his youngest got a scholarship offer to go play at Michigan. For fans to get upset at Kirk Herbstreit because he's like saying, hey, I'm looking forward to my son continuing his college football career, even though, yes, it is for that team up north. I am excited to see what my son is capable of doing in the next step of his college career. And he got an offer from Michigan when he didn't get an offer from Ohio State. So if you're a dad and you are that college athlete, Drew, who just got a scholarship offer from one school, a Big Ten school, you get an offer to go play football for a major college program, and you don't get it from the other school where your daddy and your granddaddy both played, then what do you expect, lunatic fringe of Buckeye Nation? Do you expect?
Well, his son's not going to play either way.
Huh?
His son's not going to play either way. Like, I don't know.
He may or he may not, but the point is he got an offer when he didn't get one from Ohio State. Yeah. So, yeah, and of course I'm going to say, hey, I'm proud of my son. I can't wait to see what he does at his next level. And for the lunatic fringe to come out and blast Kirk for saying that he's proud of his son for what he is moving on to do, I think is absurd. I really do. I think that is a lunatic fringe. So for Kirk, obviously, after his son commits to play for the Rodents, and now is calling from 5 to 8% of the lunatic fringe to 15 to 20. Maybe he's speaking a little out of context just because his own personal feelings right now towards a fan base that have turned their back unfairly on him, as far as I'm concerned. I could see where he's, maybe a little bit of overreaction on his part when it calls to calling this fan base 15 to 20%, but they're of lunatic fringe. But there's no doubt that Ohio State has a fair amount of lunatic fringe.
Yeah, I'd say so. I think I don't know. It just is what it is. Don't give them any attention. They're there. I mean, they say dumb stuff. I think a lot of it, like when he was on Pat McAfee, he was talking about, like, most of it was the hate directed towards Ryan Day and hate he's received himself, and I don't know.
Yeah. So he sympathizes with Ryan Day because Ryan Day is getting the same amount, heck, if not more hate, obviously, than Kirk is. But Kirk is right there. So Kirk knows exactly what Ryan Day is going through. So he sympathizes with Ryan Day. And I think that's why he's come out and been such a defender of Ryan Day, because if anything, he just feels bad for Ryan Day that Ryan Day is catching the kind of flack that he's catching, because Kirk has caught all the same kind of flack.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'm not. I think a lot of his stuff too was in reference to First Take, ESPN. Like, it was getting loud. Like,
he blasted First Take and Stephen A. Smith specifically on the broadcast too. I'm like,
well, as he should. Nobody cares what Stephen A. Smith has to say. I think, like, Stephen A. Smith, I don't know anybody that watches him. Like, if anything, I see more people viewing him and talking about him just to just basically to
you ever seen the movie Private Parts with Howard Stern?
Yeah.
There's a scene in the movie where one of the people, higher ups at the radio station come in, and they're like, people that listen to Howard Stern who like him listen for like an hour and a half each day. The people that dislike Howard Stern listen to him for 2.5 hours every day. And the guy's like, if people don't like him, why are they listening to him? And the guy just responds like, because they want to hear what he has to say so they can criticize him. Yeah. Same with Stephen A. Smith.
Yeah, I agree. Hey, can we hit pause real quick? So the fringe, as we were saying, Stephen A. Smith, all that stuff, I think is it's just silly hoopla. It's Stephen A. Smith trying to make himself relevant because he's up for a new contract. He wants more money, so he's saying crazy stuff. And then Herb Street is just kind of like, the lunatic fringe has enough ammo against Ryan Day with 4 losses to Michigan. And then Stephen A. Smith is out there trying to whore every team should hire Deion Sanders because Stephen A. Smith desperately wants to be Deion Sanders' friend. And that's kind of like my take on it. I think that, I mean, if anything, it made more people watch First Take because Kirk Herbstreit's like, I'm going to go and I'm going to talk. I'm going to, I wonder what they're going to say now. And it's just like, I don't really care what Shannon Sharp or Stephen A. Smith says. So,
well, and just to be clear, I was one of the people, Drew.
I know.
That was not a Ryan Day supporter after he lost to Michigan. I was one of those people, and I'm still going to stand by it.
You said you wanted SMU to win it all.
And I said, hey, that would be great to see SMU go on and win it all. I mean, that would be a feel-good story.
And I thought you were crazy. And I was just like, Andy's still in the he's still in the darkness, the doomer darkness of the Michigan loss.
And I was. And of course, as Dylan pointed out, our esteemed colleague, Mr. Dylan Davis of the Delaware Gazette, he said, hey, for right now, this Tennessee win, convincing win over Tennessee, gives him a stay of execution. But then after the season's done, win, lose, or not draw, what is going to happen in next year's Michigan game? And then if he loses that one, the talk is going to start all over again. There are even OSU fans, Drew, that do not care if Ryan Day wins a national championship. He is just not the man for the job because he can't beat Michigan, at least as of right now. You and I have a mutual friend that is very supportive of Ryan Day and even goes as far as to say that the previous 3 losses, aside from this year, because he does credit Ryan Day with this loss, but that the previous 3 losses are all because Michigan cheated.
That's just delusional nonsense, to be honest.
I think the whole, he's probably not the only one.
No, the whole cheating argument just needs to really, I mean, like, look, yeah, Connor Stalions was really good at sign reading. Everybody was doing it, but the signs are only a thing because the NCAA didn't want to allow technology in the game. Now they have technology in the game like they do in the NFL. So,
and so to that point, if Ryan Day continues to lose against Michigan, there ain't no cheating excuse. Just like this year, there was no cheating excuse for Ohio State losing.
No, and I think that, and I had said after the game, maybe this is what they needed. And you were like, no, you said that about Oregon. And I was like, I don't know. I think that this team needed more adversity because all year we've been slobbing their knobs saying that, oh, they're the greatest team ever. And it's like,
I wasn't that.
You weren't, either was I. I was saying, we'll see. I think it's exciting, but we'll see. I mean, I'm still not even sold on Julian saying. Everybody's saying how great he was. He threw one pass in the cold weather and it landed at a guy's feet. So I'm not.
I'm willing to forgive Julian saying for one.
I am too, but he's also small. He's kind of undersized. So I think that not that Aaron Nolan is huge, but I think that, it's a new game. The Michigan game matters a ton, but it doesn't matter as much as it used to. And I think OSU fans have issues with that, but it's the state of college football. We are not going to change it. There's a lot of money. Now, there are a lot of pundits that are saying we don't need. Ironically, I think the dumbest things I've heard are the paid spokesholes on ESPN who aren't licensed shows like the McAfee show. That are paid spokesholes that are criticizing the team selection. Herb Street's talked about it too. He got killed for that as well. And I think that, what are we talking about, the best teams versus most deserving? I think if you have 3 losses, everybody, yes, I agree. The last 20 years, the SEC's been dominant, but it's mainly been Nick Saban that's been dominant. Nick Saban and Urban Meyer were dominant for a few years. But before, the SEC was not dominating the BCS until Nick Saban came and won it, the first one for LSU. The SEC was kind of on the way down. Nick Saban goes in there and he really changes everything. Now that Nick Saban's gone, NIL's a thing. The SEC just has not looked as dominant. We just saw Texas A&M lose to USC in the first Big Ten, second Big Ten SEC matchup. OSU shit-stomped Tennessee. We've yet to see how good Texas really is. They're playing an Arizona State team that we don't know how good they are.
I think Texas wins that convincingly.
I don't. I think that Boise State potentially upsets Penn State.
I could see that.
Because when I was looking, I was like, wait, all those BCS bowls that Boise won were all the Fiesta Bowl, the Statue of Liberty play, the previous 2 games, which put Boise State on the map. That for some reason I thought it was BYU back then, different Mormon school.
The Statue of Liberty play?
Yeah. And
that was 06 against Oklahoma. Yeah. And Boise State went undefeated that year.
They did.
Yeah.
And so I think that Texas could lose. I think Penn State could lose. Notre Dame and Georgia's going to be an interesting game. Notre Dame's best defensive lineman out. He's done. Georgia doesn't have their quarterback. Georgia still got in, though, with the backup quarterback. So
Georgia's defense is what is going to propel them to win.
But that's the same with Texas.
Yeah.
I mean, so it's like
the same for Ohio State, too.
It could be. It really could be. But I just
tell you what, Penn State, they got a great rushing defense, but look at what happened in the last 5.5 minutes of their game against Ohio State. Ohio State just ran out the clock for a 20-13 win, and they're going to be asked to stop the best running back in the country, Ashton Genty. So,
well, him or Love are arguably the best running backs. I think Love is he's not getting his flowers as much. Like somebody said, I think
not getting enough love.
Yeah, Love's not getting enough love. I think I heard Nick Saban say that Love is potentially the best skilled player in college football right now.
Well, I mean, he could be, but right now, Ashton Genty. And we're going to see how for real Ashton Genty is. And remember, Boise State played Oregon to within a field goal. Now, granted, that was the very first game of the season for both teams, but still, Ashton Genty had a great game, and, you know, they played Oregon to within a field goal. So, yeah, we're going to find out how for real Ashton Genty is against Penn State's pretty good rushing defense.
We are, and I just want to, I don't know if you saw Iowa State kind of shut up and Miami fans, and my buddy Dutch, who's a big shout out to Dutch, big Miami fan, thinks that they should fire their coach and their program's a joke. Which honestly, like being a 2-loss ACC team, the ACC lost both first round games in convincing fashion. They just haven't really looked that good. NC State just lost to East Carolina. There's a fight after the game in a bowl game.
Well, did you see the two Miami players get into a fisticuff? Two Miami players got in a fight with each other on the sideline during their game against Iowa State. Started throwing punches at each other.
Cam Ward doesn't finish the game. They lose by a point. Your boy, the Ohio guy at Iowa State, wins. Kind of shuts the mouth. Iowa State was the only championship team that played for a Power 4 championship game that didn't get in the playoffs, and they got blown out. So, and they beat Miami. So I don't know. I think there's, I think matchups kind of create things, but tomorrow we got the continuation, and it's the first game of the day of the Big Ten versus SEC with Bama versus Michigan.
And Bama is going to clean their clock because Michigan's already had some guys announce they're not going to play in the game. And, getting back, though, to what you said about most deserving, most amount of wins, this and that, I had made the statement that I wouldn't have doubted if Alabama had gotten in, had they beaten Penn State or beaten Texas or something like that. They probably would have won their first round game. Going back and looking at it, though, I'm not real sure because this was not a Nick Saban Alabama. This is a Cohen DeBoer Alabama that lost at Vandy after a crazy win over Georgia. This is an Alabama that got trounced by Oklahoma. Exactly, on the road. They lost to Tennessee by a touchdown.
At home. They lost it to Tennessee.
No, it was at
Tennessee. Travel well.
It was at Tennessee. All three of their losses this year were on the road. Yeah, because that was the game. Tennessee tore down the goalpost.
Oklahoma lost at home to Tennessee.
No, Alabama lost all three of their games on the road this year.
No, I know. I'm aware of that. I was talking about when they lost to an Oklahoma team that lost at home to Tennessee, and Oklahoma came out and embarrassed them.
Yeah,
I just don't think the SEC is as strong as it's been. USC beat LSU opening in Las Vegas. Now USC seems to be way different when they're playing in the Western time zone. Like the West Coast time zone, they seem to be a completely different team, which was weird. But we saw a lot of that in the Big Ten. The records weren't very good for teams that traveled 2 time zones or more. I just think like everything is just changing and it's different. And I think like a lot of people are going to bat saying, "Oh, we should have put more SEC teams in." It's like maybe South Carolina, but we'll see. We'll see how they play. I just don't think. I mean, yeah, we can talk about the history of the SEC the last 20 years, but we're talking about right now. Last year, the Big Ten dominated the playoff because it was Washington and Michigan in the national championship. Um, Michigan wins. The Big Ten lost. I think they lost majority of the bowl games, but they also had a lot of guys sitting out that didn't play, mainly Ohio State, Missouri. But then, so I mean, I just think we're gonna find out what happens. I would not be surprised if this Michigan team actually shows up. They fired their offensive coordinator. They have a lot of momentum going into this game, beating Ohio State, stomping on Northwestern, having a close loss against Indiana team in Indiana, which a lot of people are shitting on Indiana for some crazy reason. And it's like they dominated every team they played except Ohio State and Michigan. And then they they had the closest playoff game. Sure, it was some garbage time touchdowns at the very end. But to get a touchdown, go for 2, and then get an immediate onside kick, then another touchdown, miss the 2. I mean, that was pretty exciting.
It was exciting. Yeah, they made it thrilling there for the last 5 minutes, but for the
it was a dominant performance by
first 55 minutes, yeah, I mean, that was all Notre Dame.
Pretty much once they threw that interception right on the 2-yard line, and then we had the 98-yard touchdown run from Love, it was over.
Yeah.
So how do you like this? So you say Michigan gets stomped tomorrow. Then we got Louisville. Then we got Iowa, Missouri. How do you see that game going?
If Iowa can run the ball against Missouri, and yeah, this is a Missouri team that a little bit down from last year, but not horrible by any means. In fact, let me check out their stats here real quick. This is a team that finished a little bit better than midway through the SEC. They were 7th in the SEC. And they had some close games this year. Boston College by 6 at home, a field goal win over Vandy at home. Got absolutely mud stomped by Texas A&M by 31 points. A close win against Auburn at home by 4 points. Got shut out by Alabama 34-0. Got beat by 4 points on the road at South Carolina. Beat Oklahoma by a touchdown at home. Arkansas by a touchdown at home. So this has not been a very dominant Missouri team, even though they are ranked. But if Iowa and Caleb Johnson, if Iowa can run the ball effectively, I think Iowa ends up winning this game. Missouri's rush defense, they're allowing over 130 yards a game. So if Iowa can play ball control, can run effectively, I think they win in a close game. But if Missouri's able to shut them down, Iowa's in trouble because they cannot throw for squat. I mean, their passing offense is just putrid. So once again, it's just going to depend on the run game. So if Iowa can run the ball and control the clock, I think they win in a close one. If not, I think Missouri wins by a couple touchdowns if they're able to shut down Caleb Johnson.
We also got South Carolina versus Illinois.
That's going to be an interesting matchup. Let me tell you what, the Illini were kind of the surprise team, except for Indiana this year. Illinois came out and they won a crazy game against Nebraska. And, of course, then Nebraska really didn't end up being anything. But
they only got Illinois, Oregon, but they lost a close game to Minnesota. They got blown out by Oregon. They lost a close game they kept it. They were pretty dominated by Penn State in Happy Valley. I think that was a whiteout game, but it's been fun. I don't know. I think this is kind of like if both teams all show up, I think that's going to be a more premier I think it's funny that it's Bama against Michigan, unranked Michigan, but then it's 15 ranked South Carolina versus 20 ranked Illinois. So, but
Yeah.
also all the top Big Ten teams made it to the playoff versus the SEC. So
Yeah, I think Illinois, South Carolina could be a good game. You mentioned South Carolina being one of the potential, a team that, a fringe playoff team. They had a good season this year. And I think Illinois can go in there and give them a battle. I think South Carolina probably will end up winning that game. But otherwise, I think Illinois can give them a game. I think it's going to be a good matchup.
it's in Florida at the Citrus Bowl, the Cheez-It Citrus Bowl. I'm going with Illinois. They're gonna pull off the upset.
Okay.
Then I got obviously Ohio State. I think I'm gonna stick with Notre Dame. Probably Texas and Penn State. I think the only upset's really going to be Ohio State and Oregon. Oh, and then Notre Dame and Georgia. I don't know about Notre Dame and Georgia. I don't know. I'm just looking forward to some good games. And what stinks though is like I'm not going to be able to really enjoy Notre Dame, Georgia if Ohio State loses. I don't know what. I think it's going to ruin my day, to be honest. If it's like but I don't think it's going to happen. I think Ohio State wins and they right some wrongs. I don't know. I don't really have much else to add besides, I think we should stop doing Christmas NFL games because they're all so boring, even though they got a ton of ratings on Netflix. But they were boring, so we should just stop doing it. I mean, we don't need that many games on Christmas, just like we don't need this many teams in the NCAA. I don't know if I got off that topic. I might have because I think I've been a little disjointed today. Odd for ESPN pundits to dog the CFP when they're the ones that control it. I think that was very bizarre to me, just in general. Like, and it's kind of, it goes to like ESPN took on this pro wrestling model years ago, and it's the same with CNN. ESPN has a show early on. They have their own guy come on and say some crazy stuff. And that's the talking points for the rest of the day. Oh, did you hear what Jaws said about this person? Can you believe Jaws said this about such and such player? And then Stephen A., that was kind of like his model. But then it's just played out. Like wow, everybody's saying that the college football playoff isn't the answer. It's not. We've had 1 week and it was awesome. Like, yeah, there's some blowouts, but they're fun to watch.
Well, what do we go back to? The whole reason that we being the fan base, essentially created this college football playoff committee was because we were tired of computers deciding who was going to play in the BCS.
I think we need.
So they said, all right, I'm sick of Jeff Sagarin and the Harris poll and like 6 different of these computer polls that were lumped into the AP. Actually not the AP, but the coaches poll, because the AP after the 2003 season said we're done. But all of these computer polls were all coagulated together to come up with the 2 best teams, and we got tired of that. And we said, no, let's get back to our roots and just have people, human brains and eyes, looking at teams and judging this team is better than that team. That's why we as a fan base were clamoring for an actual set of human beings to decide who is going to play. And when the 4-team playoff came out, people were like, oh God, only 4 teams? And I'm like, well, when's it going to end? And then they just skipped over 8 and went right to 12, and people are still bitching about it. And like I said in last week's podcast, Drew, it's never going to be enough.
Yeah.
It's never going to be enough. People aren't going to be happy. Even if you go to 16 teams, even if you go to 20, 24, the all other college football divisions have a 32-team playoff. Can you imagine, like...
I think it'd be great. Take the top 25 teams. Call it a day.
I'm happy with 12. I think 12 is enough.
Yeah, I
I
think
think
so.
their formula for it is screwed up, and they need to fix the formula.
You mean
But
number one in the
otherwise,
country
I'm
playing
fine
the
with
number
12
six
teams.
team? Number one's playing number 6. Number 9 is playing number 4. Number 12 is playing number 3, and 2 is playing 5. So number 1 and 2 teams have a harder road than 3 and 4.
Yeah, once again, the formula for them to base that the 4 highest ranked conference champions get an automatic bye is hogwash. Okay. Boise State, although I just sang their praises about being a good football team, having the best running back in the country, as far as I'm concerned, and playing the number 1 team in the country to within a field goal, I still don't think that them being in the Mountain West and being a Mountain West conference champion is enough for them to be in a bye situation. Same with Arizona State. Arizona State, I wouldn't even necessarily consider Arizona State, even though they went 11-2 and did win the Big 12. I'm not sure I would consider them to be worthy of being one of the top 4 teams in the country. Because let's face it, the Big 12 is down. The Big 12 is down without Texas, Texas A&M, Oklahoma. They're just not as good of a conference as they used to be.
Well, if they beat Texas, everybody will change their narrative.
And if they beat Texas, absolutely. Yeah. But I think they should just go with, hey, here's our eye test. These are the top 12 teams. You want to put the 5 highest ranked conference champions in the playoff. Yeah, okay. I'll go along with that. But even then, I think you should just 1 through 12. Here's our rankings. This is who gets in. And you know what? If they had done that formula, Drew, guess who gets into the playoff this year, because they were actually the committee's 11th ranked team?
Alabama.
And if they went with just a ranking format, as far as, okay, the top 4 teams get a bye, and then 5 against 12, 6 against 11, yada, yada, yada. Guess who Alabama would have played in the first round?
Ohio State. Yeah, I was looking at that too, and
because that would have been your 6-11 game.
Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't have mattered if we would have hosted Alabama. We probably would have blown them out too.
I'd love to. And hey, Tennessee beat Alabama. We blew out Tennessee. So why shouldn't Ohio State blow out Alabama too? I don't agree with that formula either when it comes to playing teams, but
we'll see how they play against Michigan. Michigan's got a new offensive coordinator. They fired their offensive coordinator. They got the tight end coach playing. I mean, I thought OSU should blow out Michigan, and Michigan said, no, we're here to stay. They got their new $10 million quarterback on the field practicing. Everyone's saying how great he looks. He looks so big, blah, blah, blah. So we'll see what happens. We got, I think that's it, bud. We've been recording for a while. I didn't bring as much heat as I thought I was today. I thought I was going to be pretty fired up, but I wasn't. I was fired up, but you know what I mean? I wasn't as overreactionary. I think I got a lot of it out on the phone call.
Yeah. No, man, I think we covered some good stuff, but let's just say Wednesday night. Wednesday night, man. Yeah, go Bucks for sure. I am cautiously optimistic.
Penn State and Boise State. First game, 7:30. It's going to be after South Carolina, Illinois, and Michigan, Alabama. So we got some Big Ten teams playing, and Washington, Louisville. So that should be a good game. We'll see how. I think Louisville wins. I'm not sold on Washington. The Sun Bowl though, so it's in Florida, right?
No, it's in Texas.
The Sun Bowl's in Texas.
Yeah, I think it's in Dallas.
I think so too. I forgot about that. The Sun Bowl's not in Florida.
I know, kind of weird, right?
Yeah.
Sunshine State, the Sun Bowl. It's in Texas. Yeah.
Where's the ReliaQuest Bowl that Michigan and Alabama are playing in?
Is that the old Hall of Fame Bowl? I think that's in Tampa. The ReliaQuest Bowl.
See, if it is, my cousin's going. Yeah, my cousin's definitely going to that game. He lives in Tampa, and he's a huge Michigan fan.
Yeah, it's in Tampa, Raymond James Stadium. Yeah. So that's the old, God, you go back to the Hall of Fame Bowl, then the Outback Bowl. Now it's the ReliaQuest Bowl.
So that I thought the Outback Bowl is still a thing though. No, that's the Alamo Bowl.
Yeah, the Alamo, and that's, of course, in San Antonio. But,
Yeah.
yeah.
What have you thought of the bowls before we leave? Have you watched any of these bowl games?
You know what? I haven't watched a single bowl. I didn't watch the Texas A&M USC game.
I'll tell you.
I turned it on last night on ABC to watch the last couple of minutes of the BYU Colorado bowl game, the first ever bowl game between two teams from the same conference. Like, what the hell are we doing? You want to talk about an overreaction Sunday real quick, Drew. I mean, for years.
Poop on Colorado today.
Huh?
I forgot to poop on Colorado today.
You know what? Okay. Just getting to the aspect of the bowls. For years, we know that there have been too many bowl games out there. We are rewarding too many average teams with getting into a bowl. Now, the BYU Colorado game featuring two 9-3 teams.
Ranked teams, top 25.
Ranked teams, ranked 9-3, two good football teams, but they're from the same conference. We couldn't figure.
That played all year.
I mean, I know they hadn't played all year, but still, that would have been like Ohio State, or let's just say Indiana and Penn State don't get into the college football playoff, and they square them up in, whatever bowl game, the Citrus Bowl or something, and it's like, really? That's how it felt with BYU and Colorado to me. I'm like, the bowls couldn't figure out a way to get two teams from the same conference playing other teams. There are so many freaking bowls out there. Once again, hey, two ranked teams that were 9-3, but then BYU came out and largely shut down Colorado, and Heisman Trophy winner, Biletnikoff winner, and Thorpe Award winner. Or not, was it Thorpe or Bednarik?
He had 4 receptions, 106 yards, 1 touchdown. He still had a pretty big play. He had their only touchdown.
Yeah, so they didn't. Well, they didn't. I guess they didn't. They neutralized him to the point that he didn't have bigger stats than that. But still, 4 for 106 and a score. Yeah, that's a pretty good day.
He had 4 tackles. He led the team in tackles.
Led the team with 4 tackles, huh?
Yeah. They had a great rushing attack yesterday with 2 yards. Dallin Hayden went 1 for 0. Micah Welch had 5 carries for 25 yards. He was the leader. Colorado got destroyed. I think they just got proven that they're just the frauds that they are. Like, shout out to Dion. I think it's a pretty big deal doing what he did. He went from an HBU school to Pac-12 school. And honestly, Colorado's better than what they were, but they're not that good. They're in a crappy conference. It was nice to see them get exposed. I'm over the filleting that, Stephen A. Smith does to Dion or Coach Prime. I don't know, man. I'm glad that we don't have that BS at Ohio State.
Yeah,
we don't need a coach trying to be bigger than the team.
And you know what? Here's the thing with Dion. Yeah, see what he did at Jacksonville State, like you said, a historically HBCU school, historically black college university. He did great things with them. Then he goes to Colorado, and in their first year, they won 4 times as many games as they had won the previous season, and they went like 4-8 on the year, meaning they'd only won 1 game the season before. So he comes in, he wins 4 games, then he takes them to a 9-4 record this year, takes them to a bowl game, produces the Heisman Trophy winner, Biletnikoff winner, and Thorpe Award winner, in Travis Hunter, one of the most, if not the most dynamic college players in the country, in all of college football, probably in all divisions. So what Dion has done in just 2 short years at Colorado is nothing short of being pretty damn good. Do I want Deion Sanders to come to Ohio State? No, not at all, because I don't think he's any better of a coach, quite frankly, than Ryan Day is. And The one thing I will give credit to Dion for, though, after the game, he was shaking hands with BYU's head coach, and he was being really gracious about the loss. I mean, he was standing there, and they were talking, and BYU's head coach is like, man, great job, your team, blah, blah. And he's like, yeah, and really paying respect to BYU's head coach. Like, he wasn't acting like, just a quick handshake and walk away, or,
yeah, I mean, got embarrassed.
And the way that his team lost. I mean, the final score was what, like 38-14 or something?
7.
So what's that?
I think they only got 14. I guess they did get a garbage time touchdown.
Yeah. So it was like 38-14, but the way that Dion handled it, I thought he handled it honestly with humility and respect. And I was actually like, you know what? That's cool. That really is cool. I don't want Deion Sanders here at Ohio State. I don't think he will make any improvements to Ohio State. But I was appreciative of the way that he handled the loss and spoke to BYU's head coach afterwards. That was pretty cool.
He also paved the way for like Eddie George and other guys to take on coaching roles. And then Rich Rod took over at Jacksonville State for Dion, and now he's back at West Virginia, and he's probably going to take a bunch of transfers with him because Jacksonville State, they looked really good in their bowl game. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I think that Colorado was overrated, but I think it's still pretty awesome what Deion's doing. So shout out to Deion. Your team's overrated. Shout out to him for getting disability insurance for his players so they could play in their final game. And they played the whole game pretty much. So I thought that was cool versus, Cam Ward coming out in the first half, barely being in a lead, then sitting in the second.
And that was of his own accord. He didn't get hurt or anything?
Yeah, it looked like it was on his own accord. I remember saying to Dutch, I was like, do you think Miami, if they go down, do you think Cam Ward comes back in the game? He said he definitely does. And then he didn't. They went down and they stuck with Emory Williams, and Cam Ward went 12 for 19, 190 yards, 3 touchdowns. Emory Williams went 5 for 14, 26 yards, 1 interception. So,
yeah, I just don't know why, if you're Cam Ward, why are you going to play the first half and then
not the second?
Yeah, that's a weird decision. I mean, either you're in or you're out. You know what I mean? Like, don't get into it and then go, crap.
And that was a bizarre bowl,
why did I do this?
There was the Pop-Tart Bowl, so they had all these dudes dressed as Pop-Tarts. And at the very end of the game, they had this giant-looking toaster. See this Pop-Tart goes down, and he's waving like he got cooked. Then a giant real Pop-Tart comes out, and the players start eating it. It was very bizarre. But it was a good game. It was nice to see Iowa State win. You're a big fan of that coach. I like that coach.
Matt Campbell, baby, I'm telling you.
Before we leave, even though we're going kind of over, I want to shout out University of Toledo. The best game I ever saw in person was in 2003 season, my freshman year of college. University of Toledo somehow is hosting Big East school Pitt, and they're 8th in the nation at the time. They got Larry Fitzgerald in his last year, and this dude Rutherford, who was a pretty good quarterback. And we had Lance Moore, who nobody knew who he was. I did, because I played against him in high school. I was like, he's awesome. He's just short. And Bruce Gradkowski, Lance Moore, and this tight end who I think he got some weird injury outside of football and didn't play after this season. Upset Pittsburgh at home. We tear down the goalpost, throw them in the river. And then UT plays them again, 20 plus years later. Actually about, the season wise, yeah, it's like 21 years later, and they win in 8 overtimes, and the MAC reigns supreme. And then the MAC has really showed up. The BG game was a great game. They ended up losing, but just exciting overall. I think the bowl games have been great. Guys are really showing up to play because they're not only playing for future opportunity for their team, they're playing potentially to get transferred to a bigger, better school or a better program. So I think the whole transfer portal has actually made some bowl games worse for like bigger schools that don't make it to the dance. But for the smaller schools, it's made them way better, or kept up the the just teams showing out like they used to. Like I remember back in the day, you were lucky. The MAC was lucky to have their champion even playing a bowl game, and now everybody gets a damn bowl game. So it's
well, and that's kind of what I'm saying about where bowl
yeah.
games are at. I mean, I don't know. Some of these bowls, that was great to see Toledo beat Pitt. You know, definitely Toledo from the Little MAC taking on Big Bad Pitt from
Toledo
the
beat
ACC.
Mississippi State's ass earlier this year too, and Toledo didn't even get to play in the MAC championship. That's how much better the MAC is this year. The MAC, I think, has lost 2 bowl games. Actually, just one. Ohio won. Northern Illinois won. Bowling Green lost. Toledo won, and Miami, Ohio won as well. Smashed Colorado State. So the MAC is 4-1 in bowl games.
Well, then there you go. That's kind of an argument, I guess, against not having as many bowl games, and they should have more. Let's reward everybody for playing.
Hey, PG almost upset Penn State in Happy Valley. They also almost upset Texas A&M in Texas. I think the MAC is a school where you can go as an opportunity, especially I know as UT, since it was open enrollment. If you didn't have the grades in high school, it's a place to go. It's a Division I junior college, and I think the MAC, like obviously there's higher. A lot of other schools have higher things, but anyway, let's get out of here. I'm talking way too much, and it's college football. We're going way over, but anyway. Go Buckeyes. Screw the blue. How bad do you think Michigan loses by?
17.
I think Michigan wins. I think they squeeze it out by 3 points.
If Kalel Mullings can run the ball like he did against Ohio State.
He's good. And I think their defense, their backup defensive guys, even without Mason Graham on them, I think they're still pretty good.
And there you go, man. I mean, is Will Johnson playing? Do you know? I think he's sitting out too,
done.
right?
Loveland's done. Johnson's done. All their guys that were big players are done. But I think that
they're done. They're done.
We'll see, man.
17, man.
We'll see. I think if they lose by 40. But I think they're going to win by 3.
Okay. I don't think they're going to get necessarily embarrassed because, like I said, Alabama's not quite the Alabama that we've been used to. But I just can't.
Milroe still can't throw it across the middle of the field. Like, he throws picks all the time when he throws it across the middle.
And, you know, Michigan doesn't have a bad defense. I mean, like you said, even without Mason Graham, without Will Johnson, now granted they had Mason Graham, when they played Ohio State. They did not have Will Johnson, and they still ended up with 2 interceptions in that game. I just can't see it, man. I just can't see it.
All right.
But I don't think they get overly embarrassed, but I think Alabama wins convincingly, like I said, by about 17 points. So.
All right.
And well, I'm not gonna call it now, but like I said, Ohio State, as long as we see I think we're going to see the same offense that we saw back in October out in Eugene, and pretty close to the offense that we saw against Tennessee. But the defense, obviously the defense, since that Oregon game, if they can put some pressure on Dylan Gabriel, yeah, I think the Buckeyes have a great chance. But this is still a high-powered Oregon
continuing to take out 3 blockers like he did against Tennessee. Like he took out 3 blockers on that. I sent you and Dylan that text of when Nico's first helmet got cracked because apparently 2 of them got cracked. I don't see who can beat Ohio State, but we'll see what happens.
Find out.
I'll call you before the game and I'll put out my pick. I'll tweet it out. So, hey, you can follow me. You can slash me on X. I'm at Drew Sample. He's at Andy's Wired. Slash him. Follow. Slash. At Columbus_Wired. This is another overreaction Sunday that was a little bit long and drawn out because of me. But anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in, and we look forward to bringing you an additional episode here soon.